National Director of the United Youth Council Incorporated.
You have called for the state of New Jersey, the Christie administration, to get involved with dealing with this issue of violence and gun violence and homicides in Newark. What do you want the administration to do?
I want the administration to first let it be known that Newark is just as much a part of any other 566 cities that's incorporated inside this state, and that when Newark have a crisis at this level, then it's the responsibility of people on the county level and on the state level to at least assess the situation and see where they can offer some help, and not wait for the call for help. They need to bring the help.
And what do you want the state to do?
Well, a number of things. First of all, you got to get a handle on the accessibility of guns that's all over the city of Newark. There's no community, no neighborhood have not been exempt from violence in the last year. So that's one thing. And whatever it needs to do to address that. The other part is there's a social undercurrent that is plaguing Newark. The joblessness, the hopelessness, these young people, a 15-year-old was shot and killed, an 18-year-old was shot and killed. That's a problem. There needs to be an evaluation of why, and that question has not been answered. And there's been a study by the New Jersey Study Commission on Violence, which I'm a part of, and we submitted an 82-page report that specifically says how many of these problems in many of our urban communities around the state have become so engaged in violence and gun violence. And these recommendations sets on the desk of the governor, and the governor have not even taken it up. And we're now asking our local leaders, and particularly Mayor Ralph Baraka, to take a look at those recommendations that call for dealing with this issue on a social level, on a policing level, and a political level, because things have to change. And you can't police this out. You can't arrest everybody that you think that may be a part of this drug and gang and gun culture. You have to look at it from a social perspective and begin to start bringing the kind of resources and experts into town to begin to look at it and begin to try to impact the problem.
The mayor says he's doing that because he's working with Todd Clear, professor at Rutgers University, who's been involved in these issues for a long time. And Clear's perspective is exactly what you're talking about, at least it sort of seems to be, where you need to deal with some of the social ills to curb some of the violence issues in Newark.
Well, that's all well and good. There's a whole bunch of studies. Ours is pretty much updated. It's concentrated with 14 months of studies that we had, at least 8 or 9 different public hearings on this matter. And one of the recommendations that had not hit City Hall yet is to establish a division on violence prevention and intervention. That's what we asked in some of our cities to start doing. That way you'll have a corporate department inside City Hall that does nothing but examine, research, study the trends of violence in the city, and come up with constant strategies on impact. And that's what needs to happen immediately here in City Hall.
What do you think is at the core of this issue of violence in Newark? The shootings, the young people toting guns, and things like that you're talking about. What's causing this?
Well, I can go to one study. The state police have reported that 55% of these shootings are over quarrels. That means silly incidents. You know, you stepped on my toe, or you looked at my girlfriend, or it's not over what we think it is. It's not because there's this big drug war over turf, over money, and what have you. No, 90% of these shootings is over quarrels, over basic fundamental incident that, again, reflect on the social mindset and morality inside our community. So you have to deal with it from that perspective. The police cannot fix that.
The mayor is going to hold a news conference this afternoon talking about the arrest of someone in some of the recent incidents here in Newark. I guess to a certain extent the Public Safety Department will be patting itself on the back, and City Hall be patting itself on the back as well. What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, right now, Newark have about 71 murders, which is about 7 or 8 more than last year this time, which will put it, if at this pace if it continue, it'll be higher than 2013, which was 112 murders. And even then, it was higher than it ever been since the 90s. You can't arrest your way out of this. You can't police your way out of it. If you're going to do a policing mechanism, it has to be incorporated with a heavy community policing kind of mechanism. Then it has to be a social, a strong social program that impacts some of the mindset of these young folks and the conditions that happens in these communities every day.
Is at the root of this, though, education?
Well, yes. First of all, you have a school system that many of their young folks, as high as maybe 55 to 6% of their high schoolers don't complete. They drop out. And so when you have a community that lacks in quality education, you're going to also create ignorance. You're going to create depression. You're going to create the kind of anxiety and agitation and aggravation that give you this kind of anger and mayhem that you have now in this city.
So the solution is dealing with some of the social issues and the education.
There's only one solution in Newark, and that's dealing with the social ramifications of Newark itself.
And do you see anybody moving in that direction?
Well, I'm trying to help them, and I don't see that. We have a news conference that's basically going to talk about arrest rates and what have you. That's only not even a Band-Aid on the problem. So we're hoping that the mayor is open for other suggestions and other ideas that deal with the ultimate problem in this city.
Any response since your release yesterday from the state?
No response yet from the state, but we're going to work at it throughout the day, and hopefully we'll get some response from the state. Because there's other cities. Newark is not alone. There's Camden, Jersey City have an uptick. Plainfield have 8 murders, which is higher than both 15 and 14 years of gun violence.
Okay, so if this is happening in other New Jersey cities as well, where you're seeing, as you said, this uptick in murders and homicides, what's going on here?
Well, there's this mindset, unfortunately plaguing mostly African-American young men, that the way to resolve their issues is through violence, through gun violence. And somehow we need to campaign against that. There's not even a statewide campaign against gun violence right now. There's no effort. So there's so many other things that we can do that's not being done. And we have to pay attention to that. And we can't put all this burden on police officers because it's not going to fix the problem.
Anything you'd like to add? I didn't cover.
Well, our intentions is going to move from this Saturday. We are having a walk. We call it a walk for solutions. When we're going to walk from East Orange, we're going to meet at East Orange City Hall at 12 noon, and we're going to actually walk. Some going to ride bikes or what have you through 13 cities, from East Orange through Newark, Irvington, Elizabeth to Plainfield. And we plan to hold a rally at that point. And that's at 12 noon in front of East Orange City Hall. We plan to start. All right. The rest of the please.
You issued your report. That was only a few months ago. What has transpired since then? Who's paying attention to the recommendations in this report?
Well, right now the report is back in the legislature and the governor's hands. And because there's so much other politics going on, there's gun bills that's on the table. That report, those recommendations have not even been looked at yet.
That's unfortunate.
That's very unfortunate because we've done an intensive amount of studies in this problem, and we looked at cities from Patterson to Atlantic City.
Do you ever look at this situation and see the kind of resources that are being shuffled around a state as wealthy as New Jersey, as densely popular as New Jersey says? This goes on because there are some people in positions to influence the change who aren't paying attention to it or simply don't care.
Well, there's certainly this concern because I mean there's this big outcry over heroin addiction, and there's some moves on the local legislative level as well as the national level to do something about that, and they're calling it both a crisis and an epidemic. But the issue of gun violence, there's no movement on it. There's no legislative movement on it, specifically to deal with the ills of the problem.
The way they're dealing with heroin.
The way they're dealing with heroin. They're not policing heroin now. They're talking about dealing with stuff from the court, judiciary level to deal with it on a treatment and all that kind of stuff. So that's not happening when you're talking about gun violence, where the CDC has proclaimed gun violence and violence as a public health crisis. So there's some suspicions there. I'm not going to say the R word, but I am going to say that there's some suspicion there on how one issue, which is called a crisis, an epidemic, another issue you call it a crime.
Good afternoon,